I want to bring in a big story that's coming in. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has put out a very strong warning just moments ago. He's pledged, the Union Home Minister has pledged that the perpetrators of the Delhi blast will be given the strictest possible punishment as per law. The Union Home Minister's message comes as investigators tighten the noose around this terror module. New evidence in this case is surfacing and new layers. So even as you and I speak at this point of time, there are investigations that are going on, raids and searches being carried out in different parts of the country, because this clearly is a race against time. Some cars have been recovered, some ammunition and some explosives have been recovered. The information is there are some elements of this terror module that are still at large. There is information about certain other automobiles. Now, are those automobiles already laden with explosives? Are these elements waiting for an opportune moment to strike? And the security forces, while they had caught a majority of the module, one doctor, Muhammad Umar Nabi, managed to get away, and Muhammad Umar carried out the terror attack. How many others like him are still out there? And that is the Home Minister's message to the security forces: catch them as quickly as possible. And to the perpetrators, the sponsors and the enabling ecosystem, the strictest possible action as per law will be taken against them. Listen in.
આતંકવાદી ઘટનામાં જેમનું મૃત્યુ થયું છે એ સૌ મૃતક લોકોના પરિવારજનો માટે મારી ઊંડી સંવેદના હું વ્યક્ત કરું છું. હું આ તબક્કે એટલું કહેવા માંગુ છું કે બોમ્બ બ્લાસ્ટની કાર્યવાહી કરવાના સૌ જે કોઈ भी જે સ્તરે આની અંદર સંડોવાયેલા છે એ સૌને કાયદાની અદાલત સામે લઈ જઈ સૌને ઉચિત સજા થાય એના માટે ભારતના વડાપ્રધાનનો જે સંકલ્પ છે એ નિશ્ચિત રૂપે પૂરો થશે અને એક એવું ઉદાહરણ બેસવાનું છે કે જેથી ભવિષ્યમાં આવી ક્યારે આતંકવાદી ઘટના ના થાય.
The Home Minister saying exemplary punishment will be given to the perpetrators and of course those who were part of this terror module. Let me now bring in our guests. We have the best counter-terror experts joining me on this special broadcast. I have Yashovardhan Azad, former Special Secretary of the Intelligence Bureau, joining me on this broadcast. Lieutenant General Raj Shukla is former Army Commander and a commentator on strategic affairs, joining me on this broadcast. Professor Brahma Chellaney is one of India's best-known strategic voices with me on this broadcast, as is my colleague Sandeep Unnithan. And Sandeep, quickly to you first. The Home Minister not only saying punishment would be given, it will be exemplary. Are these words, or is there a very strong message behind these words?
There's a very strong message clearly, Gaurav, behind these words. And I want to take our viewers back to the last time we saw such a large number of VBIEDs, vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices, being used on a very large scale. That is the Mumbai terror attacks of 1993, March 12th, 1993, where a dozen bombs went off. They were packed in suitcases, in cars, in jeeps, and scooters all across Mumbai city. They were the deadliest terror attacks in any city before 9/11. 257 Mumbaikars were killed, 1,400 injured. And these, Gaurav, mind you, are bombs that actually went off. So you can imagine the kind of mayhem that these plotters were planning to carry out in Delhi and possibly other parts of India with the kind of explosives that have been recovered. Tons of ammonium nitrate. This is a plot that has been nipped in the bud, Gaurav. It's a bit like what if the Mumbai police had chanced on the Al Husseini building where Tiger Memon and the ISI people were actually assembling those explosives. What if they had burst in before those bombs had gone off? That's exactly what our security forces, our intelligence people have done in Delhi by busting this module before they could carry out this very nefarious plan. The plan very clearly, Gaurav, is to carry out massive attacks all across Delhi, all across India using VBIEDs. And it's a miracle that we've managed to there's only one of those bombs went off. And
a miracle, but sadly, which came with 13 lives lost. And unfortunately, we still do not know where other members of this module, or are there other modules like this, like the doctor from Hyderabad arrested in Gujarat, trying to make that Ryzen chemical weapon, arrested with assault rifles and Beretta pistols and Glock pistols. How wide is this plot to burn our country? Professor Brahma Chellaney, it seems India's enemies are waging war by other means and on multiple fronts. What you saw in Delhi, would you classify this as an act of war being waged by an enemy? Of course, they've been doing this, as Sandeep Unithan rightly pointed out, since the 1980s and the 1990s, Punjab, Kashmir, Bombay, and now Delhi again.
What has happened in the National Capital Region is unprecedented in terms of international terrorism. There have been many examples of white-collar terrorism. 9/11 was one case. The Dhaka cafe bombing was another case. The Easter Sunday bombings in Sri Lanka were also carried out by highly trained professionals who came from wealthy families. But what the police uncovered in the NCR is unprecedented. A working cell comprising several active doctors who leveraged their profession to facilitate operations, procurement, and logistics. They were also involved in recruitment and indoctrination. And their medical status provided them perfect cover for clandestine operations, allowing them to operate in NCR under the radar of traditional security surveillance mechanisms. There has never been a documented case of this type where multiple active doctors have led and run a coordinated terrorist cell. Of course, there have been individual cases where doctors have played a key role in a terrorist group, including Osama bin Laden's deputy. He was a qualified surgeon.
Ayman al-Zawahiri.
Yes, and the doctor who co-founded the Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
Yes.
Fatih Shikaki was also, known as a trained doctor. George Habash was a pediatrician before he became a militant/terrorist. But a group of doctors working together, actively running a cell and engaged in stockpiling nearly 3 tons of military-grade explosives. All this is unprecedented. And therefore, clearly, the government in Delhi, as well as the state governments in different states, clearly have a task because there was one deadly car explosion.
Yes.
But the idea was to carry out a series of coordinated attacks.
Shocking.
Especially targeting NCR.
Yes.
The fact that these people were operating from NCR, they must have operated for months, because you can't accumulate nearly 3 tons of military-grade explosives overnight.
In fact, no, Professor Chellaney, from the diary and from this, I have this from sources on authority, the plot was in the works for close to 2 years, if not more. That's what the diary reveals. It has a list of close to 20-25 names subject to confirmation. But the fact remains, General Shukla, there is clear and present danger. The advisory that's been issued by the Delhi police, if you have to catch an international flight, reach the airport at least 3 hours earlier because of strict security. If you have to reach a train, if you catch a train, at least reach the station 2 hours earlier because of security. Metro station, keep time. This would indicate there's still clear and present danger. There's a life threat still in and around Delhi and perhaps other parts of the country. General Shukla.
Or as the other panelists have pointed out. Yeah.
Go on, sir.
Can you hear me, Gaurav?
Strength 5, go on, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
We can, General Shukla. Go on, sir.
Yeah. So,
Okay, give me a moment as I try and reestablish this link with General Shukla. But Mr. Azad, let me bring this question to you right now. What would you make of the advisory that's gone out, the arrests that have taken place, and those who are still out there, despite days of interrogation? The security forces haven't been able to, the investigative agencies haven't been able to unravel the entire plot so far. So you're on mute. Request you to unmute yourself.
I would totally agree with Professor Chellaney when he says this is an unprecedented kind of a sinister plot that we have seen or unearthed. And to this extent and its linkages in the various states. As far as the, I'm very happy that you are focusing on that point, which we discussed earlier, that the Al Falah University, from there you will get a minefield of information. And for those people who were there, because this module was being developed for 2 years, they were not able to see those quintals of ammonium nitrate being brought from Nu and Mewat, repeated trips by those 4 cars, but yet not being kept over there, those meetings, those timers. It's impossible to not to be able to trace. So if there was a distancing, willfully, if there was a distancing because they didn't know, I'm not too sure about that. And therefore, it's extremely important to get more and more information from there. As far as the security protocols, the police is considering, of course, I'm sure in this respect, the IB would also be, sending out circulars to the various states because security matter and the intelligence matters are IB related. But it's extremely important because, for the time being that we have seen these modules which has been developing for 2 years having its linkages we have not been able to explore as yet.
Yes.
Those 2 Maulanas, the number of people they have radicalized, if there's a list somewhere, then it's extremely important, especially then breaking through those encrypted messages. What are the directions? Because you gave those 2 very important dates, November 8 and November 12. Was it a missed opportunity on November 8? And obviously, after November 10 incident, the November 12 incident could not take place. Therefore, if there are more cars out in the open, then we are in trouble. If there are more doctors who are already on their, if they are determined enough to make that assault, then we are again in trouble. So I do hope all these are explored at the earliest. And I do hope before that there is no strike at any public place. Mind you, there are few places we have to guard. There are these crowded areas in Delhi, which they had surveyed. There is that RSS office in Lucknow they had talked about. And similarly, more and more information which is coming out from their diaries.
Okay. Let me bring in General Shukla once again. General Shukla, you and I spoke extensively post Pulwama, during Operation in Balakot, during Operation Sindoor, and the Prime Minister saying, making it very clear, any act of terror would be seen as an act of war. In this case, considering this is a module of the Pakistan-based terrorist organization, Jaish-e-Mohammed, do we look at it as LT's local terrorists investigate the foreign support, or would you see this as an act of war, and should India act accordingly?
Firstly, I think this information which is coming out about Dr. Shaheen's connection with the sister of Masood Azhar or something like that,
right,
that perhaps should in days lead to what I think is the inevitable Jaish connection. So I think behind this module, Pakistan is very much there. It will take some time for it to be confirmed. So that is one point. Now, what does this mean? Is it an act of war? Well, from the very definition, it is an act of war. But it is my view, and this is my personal view, that responding is a sovereign decision. We will choose the time and place. It doesn't mean that every time they do something, we'll respond. That a host of factors will have to be taken into account. But if the Pakistan connection is established, then it is an act of war. And what is even more worrying, yesterday I read some news reports about a Turkish connection.
Yes.
And that should, point to the other issues which people have been bringing up. and that is this. That is terror back in a far larger banner. I, for one, personally had thought, if, as far as I can recollect, the last major incident like this outside Kashmir took place in 2013. That was, I think, the Patna bombings. Thereafter, we've not had some large attacks. So I actually thought the counter-terror apparatus was in control of things. It was not that attempts were not being made. I'm told last year about 80 terrorists were nabbed, this year so far 82. But the ability to preempt depends on the ability of the counter-terror apparatus to monitor a cell as it unfolds, as it expands, and to pounce on it. Now, if that is what we have done, then we are in control. But if we have stumbled into evidence, then we are really not in control in terms of counter-terror capacities. And that other issue, I think what Mr. Azad was bringing up, what is very worrying is this terror den in the university.
Yes.
I mean, people seem to have looked the other way. There should have been police information flowing in. How can you have this going on for 10 to 11 months in Delhi and are not knowing about it? So in that sense, our counter-terror apparatus needs to expand. And I would just like to...
Intelligence and counter-terror. Go on, sir. Yes, sir.
Just one shot. This 27th amendment should worry us even more.
Sir, I'm coming to that in just a moment. Sir, I'm coming to 27th Amendment in a short while from now. I'm restricting myself to this for the moment because Professor Brahma Chellaney, would you look at this as one, an intelligence failure? The fact that it was on for close to 2 years. The fact that not one, not two, not three, but at least a dozen doctors, paramedical staff and others were apparently involved across multiple states from Jammu and Kashmir to, the brother-sister duo from Lucknow, Dr. Ansari and Dr. Shaheen, the doctors who are involved in Delhi, Muzammil, Adil, Umar, the doctors who've now been taken into custody, that Maulana Irfan. Our agency should have known if it's such a wide terror network across so many states.
This is a wake-up call for India's counter-terrorism strategy, Gaurav. That strategy needs to adapt to the new realities. There needs to be intelligence on ideological footprints. There should be a shift in the focus of intelligence gathering. Intelligence agencies should be able to identify the specific clerical, academic, or online figures who are radicalizing educated individuals. This has to be a priority too. You can't just focus on disadvantaged elements in society who may be recruited by extremists. To dismantle the entire ecosystem of terrorism, including the facilitators, recruiters, and ideologues, you have to go after those who are indoctrinating others, the ideologues. After all, what keeps terrorism alive? It's radical ideology.
Yes.
That's the root of terrorism. Unless you don't attack ideology, how will you contain terrorism? This is the first lesson that we have to learn, that we have to go after those who are in the business of radicalizing and indoctrinating others.
Oh, absolutely.
Without that, recruitment will not stop.
And unfortunately, do we brush this under the carpet? Do we try and justify it? Do we look at it as freedom of expression, Sandeep? When you have elements in our society, in our midst who say, Bharat tere tukde honge, inshallah, and we think that that's freedom of expression because it's happening at a university. Today they are saying Bharat tere tukde honge. It seems the next day they actually want to kill innocent Indians in the way these doctors were trying to do at a university, and not just Bharat tere tukde honge. You also have these elements in our society who are hailed as activists who say, let's cut off India at Assam, let's cut off India at Chicken's Neck. If 5 lakh Muslims stand in that belt, India will be cut off. Is that freedom of expression? Or are those chaps the first level and these chaps the last level of that terror plot? From those chaps to Dr. Nabi, to this Dr. Umar.
Seems to be a certain blurring of the lines between what we call the OGWs, the overground workers, and an actual terror cell. And here, very clearly, had it not been for that very alert police officers in Jammu and Kashmir who spotted those posters being put up, in support of Jaish-e-Mohammed, we possibly wouldn't have busted this terror module, and we, God forbid, we'd have been actually talking about the aftermath of what they actually had planned. So it was a very alert group of policemen who worked, who diligently, followed up that trail, and that's what led to this uncovering of this module. So as you said, you cannot take all this lying down. The fact is that as this module is demonstrated, there seems to be a very thin line between these overground workers, radicalized elements, and that switch to becoming a full-fledged terror cell which plans mayhem across Delhi, NCR, and possibly across the country. So there needs to be a complete overhaul of our system, Gaurav, especially when it comes to monitoring such elements, these radical elements that are in our midst, that are preaching violence, hatred, indoctrinating young minds, and as this terror cell of doctors has shown us, that no amount of education, professionalism seem to have detracted them from their plan of carrying out mass terror attacks on the scale of Mumbai 1993.
Yeah, just imagine that these are the elements, they have the best of society, they have the best of education, and then so many of them end up being terrorists and killing innocent people instead of healing them. But let me bring you in, Mr. Azad, and one by one, General Shukla. Those who say Bharat tere tukde honge at universities one day are the same elements in your view, and I want to understand from you. Or those who say let's cut off India at Assam. If 5 lakh Muslims stand there, India will be cut off. Is that activism? Are these overground workers? Or are this just 50 shades of terror, one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, Mr. Azad?
Whoever they are, I mean, whether they're activists or whether then nobody has a right to talk in terms of Bharat ke tukde honge, and strongest action should be taken against them. But one of the most important things which I want to just take a minute on is the de-radicalization, because that is exactly at the core of this terrorist ideology. De-radicalization cannot be only left to the intelligence and the police forces. It is also, it's time that the Prime Minister should call the chief ministers and tell them to engage with the so far aloof middle class, the educated youth, also with those people who are not mere voters. Every time the political ideology is to meet with those who are the voters, never meeting the educated or middle class who feel absolutely alienated and aloof from whatever state activities are doing. So that is extremely important for de-radicalization.
Okay, General Shukla, your take on this. Is India too soft a state in dealing with these elements until it's too late? Once they've done something, India cracks the whip. But before that, is it time for preemptive action against these people without fear of favor?
Well, over the last decade, we've been accused of getting too hard. So I think that soft tag is a thing of the past. But two issues I want to raise. One is about this technical intelligence. I mean, human intelligence is extraordinarily important. But see, what happened in the valley for a while was those sets which we couldn't breach. So that is, one part of the problem. Today, in this module also, this morning I was following NDTV, I think, and they were talking of this Thema app, this instant messaging app, which is not connected to a phone, not to an email. Now, what are our capacities to monitor this kind of stuff?
Okay.
Because if you cannot get over these technical challenges, on the ground, I'll tell you, it's very difficult to break into these modules. And the second point I want to make is a larger point, which I always want to make, that it is just not terror from the West, it is from the East with China. The point I'm making is that our national security challenges to include terror seem to be running ahead of us. We need, the National Security Advisor and the apex political leadership to spare a week and listen to some voices from all over the country about what we should do in the long term. We should not be falling behind the challenge. And I get a sense that we are falling behind the challenge.
Professor Chellaney, is that also your appreciation? The manner in which, and in a moment from now, on the other side of a quick break, I will be coming to the aspect of a radical Islamist general in Pakistan, now with the 27th Amendment, becoming dictator for life or as long as he lives, unless, either a Zia happens to him or a Musharraf, I have no idea. But before that, are we falling behind in this war on radical Islamist terror being waged from our western borders, perhaps our eastern borders, and of course now the enemy within?
Well, that's the big long-term threat. the threat from radical ideology. And the only radical ideology that threatens to partition India again is the radical Islamist ideology. And we have to face this reality. We can't, we can't be politically correct all the time. We have to understand that there are these pernicious, sinister forces operating both from within and from outside who are using religion, a perversion, a religious perversion, to undermine India's security. And to deal with that, we need to do several things. First, we need to recognize the problem. Two, we have to build counter narratives. Just political outreach to the marginalized will not be enough. We have to do it at the ideological level too. To fight ideology, you need to respond to the ideology with your own ideology. That is counter narratives. Counter narratives are the most powerful means of fighting an ideology.
So let me spend 30 seconds with all three of you, because you've raised a very pertinent point, Professor Chellaney. If a paramedic who's also the Maulvi of the Naugam Masjid in Kashmir is radicalizing young doctors in Kashmir, and not one and not two, but multiple, like many doctors, Dr. Adil, Dr. Umar, Dr. Muzammil, and there is a long list. How do you give a counter narrative when this paramedic Maulvi is giving them some kind of a spiel for years? Professor Chellaney.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that you were asking me. Look, Gaurav, targeted counter narratives. You fight ideology through ideological means too. Developing sophisticated counter narratives that address the intellectual and perceived ideological grievances of the marginalized, including of those who are highly trained, that is the professionals. So you have to develop counter narratives that also appeal to the educated class. So this building of counter narratives has to involve civil society, community leaders, and particularly respected voices from the professional, academic, and religious communities. For example, getting moderate Muslims to speak up on how radical Islamist ideology is a threat not just to India, a threat to Islam, a threat to Muslim communities in India. That's how you build targeted counter narratives.
Unless, of course, those moderate Muslims are scared of these elements themselves. After all, who would want to be the next victim of these elements? And Sandeep, the point that General Shukla was raising about technology, these young, highly educated doctors using an app, which is paid for, which does not want which does not want your phone number, which does not want your email address. It's a paid app. You can have highly secure encrypted conversation, audio, video, data. Are our security forces up to the mark? Are they lagging? In this instance, if such a group was operating for 2 years, clearly India has been found to be lagging here.
Well, absolutely, Gaurav. And the thing is that technology is moving at such an incredible speed. And this is something that General Shukla has written in his book on civil-military fusion. The fact is that technology is moving so rapidly that it's almost impossible for intelligence agencies, for the security agencies to keep catching up with it. But the fact is that at least some broad parameters should be there for them to be able to, get sophisticated tools to break encryption codes and all of that. Those should be at least there. The fundamental building blocks of that should exist, because you're clearly up against a very, very bright bunch of educated, middle-class professionals who have turned terrorists. So you have to actually keep up with them. It's no longer that old thing of, wiretapping phones and all that. They clearly know what's there in this game, and they're staying ahead of the law enforcement agency. So it's, of course,
we should actually be 2 steps forward instead of trying to catch up. But
we need to get young professionals in on the game, Gaurav.
Absolutely, because General Shukla, the threat that India faces is not just land, sea, air, or undersea. It's also cyber. Cyber is huge. In your appreciation, sir, and you've written in your book, are we lagging? Are we playing catch up?
We're absolutely lagging in cyber. It's not just cyber, it is AI-enabled cyber. I mean, you see a discourse outside, people say AI-enabled cyber is unstoppable. You hear Eric Skimmett on it. So, see, this space and cyber, they have to become combatant commands as far as possible. Technology, you need units like 8200, 9300, young technology geeks. Me and Sandeep cannot do this kind of stuff. But one point I want to make very interestingly, the one which was raised by Mr. Brahma Chellaney about the counter narrative. In the Muslim world, two places where I have seen this happening in a very sophisticated manner is Saudi Arabia and UAE.
Yes.
You visit those places today, there is a modernizing strategic discourse. It is not about religion, it is not about oil, it is about AI and all that kind of stuff. You actually see it happening. And MBZ, or MBS, sorry,
Yes.
and MBZ have done it very skillfully.
Yes.
So even in the Muslim world, building a counter narrative which is about a modernizing discourse is entirely possible. And I agree 100% with Mr. Chellaney that the experts must be brought into this business. Sometimes they hear, that in the Muslim world, such things will happen. Well, in a minority perhaps, and against them you need to take action. But the larger Muslim world, you can have a modernizing discourse as Saudi Arabia and UAE have
Oh,
done.
absolutely. And we need Indian Muslims to actually lead the charge here, and very firmly they need to come forward and lead the charge and ostracize, isolate such elements and take action against them instead of, some trying to play the victim card of being called out. Nobody's calling out anybody except these radical Islamist terrorists who are doctors and masquerading as terrorists, moonlighting as terrorists at night. So let's be very clear about that. Gentlemen, stay with me.